Hi, this is my review of Affiliation Guide number 1 for AMP Year 2. This is actually 4 guides in one. It's supposed to be used with AMP Year 2, but if you're playing AMP Year 1, this is going to be a very useful guide to the future and development of each of the different factions presented here. And if you're playing Year 3, this guide will give you a solid foundation on the past of each of those factions. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. I only have 2 criticisms. The document is not bookmarked and it doesn't have hyperlinks, so it's somewhat difficult to make your way through the entire PDF. And there are a few typos. They're not a big deal, but they are still there. But despite that, the quality is great. Everything is well organized and written and explained. You have the illustrations in the style of AMP that look somewhat like a comic book. So the theme and the content is quite easy to understand and get a sense of it. Now let's talk about the content itself. First, you have information on the changelings. Now the changelings are an affiliation or faction that have to do with moving, hiding, keeping yourself safe, because many of the members of changelings look somewhat monstrous at times. They have very noticeable effects caused because of their AMP condition. So many humans or saps do not accept them. Some of them actually fear them. So they have to deal with their uniqueness. They have to approach life in a very philosophical way, a spiritual way at times, because they actually want to be, they consider themselves to be a part of mankind. But many humans see them more like monsters. So they have to deal with issues of their own personhood and pacifism, because they do not want to fight. They will protect themselves if they get attacked, but they want to coexist with others. Although there are a few changelings that take a more violent approach to things, because for example, one of the leaders, Spearfinger, left changelings taking many members with her. And they are more on taking action and retribution because of the hardships they had to endure and because of discrimination for not being normal humans. So you have all the information on the changelings, on how they need to be very careful and who they trust. They cannot put the information concerning safe houses and bases at risk. They constantly need to hide from those that they consider their enemies. So you have details on membership and recruitment, and how each member of the changelings needs to leave his or her past behind. And they also have information on how they gather intelligence on the different safe places, such as they have one in Atlanta, Georgia. They also have one in Louisville, Kentucky. So you can have adventures and campaigns in any of those places with some hubs to serve as bases of operation. You also have information on how the changelings consider or their views on other affiliations and factions, because it's quite easy to see the changelings working a bit like allies with seekers of enlightenment who seek to understand the condition of being AMP. But they usually get into trouble with other more, let's say, close-minded affiliations, such as the United Human Front, who consider the AMP condition to be more like a disease. So you have all the information concerning that. You can have a profile of a non-player character, Trayon. She's basically an AMP that can multiply herself or create copies of her. And then you have information on new powers, such as atavism, which is the AMP has developed an environmental awareness that heightens their predatory instincts to a preternatural level. And you have information on enhancements, such as no distractions. Everything has its place and nothing prevents the AMP from being aware of the smallest changes around them. And you have other things like tricks, such as read the scene. You must have no distractions as an enhancement. The AMP can read the minute impressions and disturbances in an area to gain a detailed understanding of physical events that have occurred in the area within the last hours. You also have information on secretions, and secretions allows the amp to create a flexible whip-like extension of their own biological matter, similar to certain animals' natural defense mechanisms. And you have enhancements such as a wall crawler or who needs wings. You also have tricks like lasso catch or a whole new suit, which is basically using that secretion as sort of like an armor. And then you have an adventure focusing on the changelings. So it's more suited to be played with a group of characters that belong to the changelings affiliation. But you could also play it with some allies of the changelings. And this is basically, it has to do with a particular cell of changelings that went out of contact. They do not know what happened to them. They have received no information or messages from them, so they need to investigate this. And this adventure lends itself for a more subtle touch, very much in tune with the pacifist attitude of the changelings. This adventure rewards investigation, infiltration, and carrying out some rescues. Now, let's talk about the Seekers of Enlightenment. The Seekers of Enlightenment are all about understanding the condition of being an amp. Led by Dr. Luminous and Critter, they are all about trying to, not immediately labeling the condition of being an amp as a disease. They want to look into it, how this can be augmented or enhanced, or how this condition can be eliminated permanently. They work quite closely with the US government, although there is quite a bit of mistrust between the two groups. In fact, Luminous tried to keep most of the information away from the government intelligence, but this resulted in some dire consequences later on. In fact, Critter has disappeared during AMP Year 2, and because of that Luminous has taken a bit more of a direct approach to things, sometimes violently so. And those that have read AMP Year 3 already know what happened to Critter. So this event affects many of the goals and objectives of the Seekers of Enlightenment. You have information on the red serum and the blue serum. They are opposite in their effects, because the red serum basically enhances or bolsters your amp powers, while the blue serum can nullify those powers, or it can even eliminate them on the long term if you carry out the appropriate course. So the Seekers also give their members the choice if they want to keep being part of the AMP population, or if they want to turn back into normal humans. They can do this by using the blue serum. You have information on the training that is carried out by the Seekers of Enlightenment, how sometimes they have to be a bit more active as heroes when working with others and in order to gather more information. And you also have information on their attitudes of managing their AMP condition, not as a curse, but just something that is part of you, embracing who you are, embracing humanity as well, while keeping a scientific approach. So you have information on the organization as a whole, with the information on the leaders of Critter, Dr. Luminous, etc. Now, the Seekers of Enlightenment have something that is quite unique to them, that they support academies or schools for amps. In that way, they feel a bit like the X-Men. So all of the young amp out there can benefit from training and teaching in these facilities. So you have information on how to join the Seekers, and the information on how the Seekers get along or enter into conflict with other affiliations, because for example, in a sense, the United Human Front should be somewhat cooperative with the Seekers, but they are at odds with each other, because the United Human Front has that mentality that being an amp is actually being diseased, and mostly changelings and Namakwa seem a bit more like potential allies, but things could go in many different ways, and especially because of the changes in Year 2. You have information on new amp powers, such as, for example, kinship. A truly strange development in powers. Kinship gives the amp full control over themselves in relation to other amps on a base level, actually growing more powerful as they encounter others. And you have augments such as a refusal to fight. Immediately remove law of attraction effects from any amps within range, stopping a battle or potentially fatal encounter in its tracks. And you also have other things like stealing power. You have tricks such as smell of prey. The amp leaves the scent of an amp on the target, forcing a law of attraction check if they encounter any amps. You also have a calming aura. You must have refusal to fight. Their very presence calms other amps, causing a penalty to initiative to anyone within range and providing a bonus to any resistance check for emotional control. Now this is quite useful because in their research, the Seekers sometimes encounter unusual amps and they want to take them back to the lab in a cooperative fashion, but many times those amps are scared or angry, and this aura will help you achieve that. You have a new universal power, martial arts mastery. That's pretty self-explanatory, although it is divided in two ways. You have the way of the closed fist, which is a bit more on the offense side of things, and you have the empty hand, which is more defensive. You even have a healing meditation related to it. And then you have information on a Seeker non-player character, which is Sly. And she is all about martial arts, of course. She follows the way of the empty hand. And she has the kinship as a primary power. And then you have the adventure focusing on the Seekers, which is tone, treble, and trouble. Now in this adventure, the characters work as counselors in an academy for amps. But in this particular area, there are some United Human Front cells, so there is potential for trouble and conflict, although most of the adventure involves with interacting with other amps, solving some more personal issues, although there is potential for battle, of course. And then we have information on Typhoon. Now the members of Typhoon are quite nasty. Typhoon is all about power. They have a bit of a tribal attitude to them. They're all about using the powers brought by the amp condition to become the most powerful organization in crime. So you have information on their mysterious matriarch and all the rumors surrounding her that maybe she is a CIA agent, or maybe she's just an eminent crime figure that went up or perhaps down in corruption using her amp powers. And then you have information on human resources and how they manufacture drugs. In fact, there is quite a bit of a change to the process of drug manufacture when it comes to Typhoon, because they have discovered this way to produce juice, and juice is basically a way to that's what amps use to empower their abilities to carry them out. So we have information on their different projects, on their marketing, mergers and acquisition. You have information on many non-player characters that are the different leaders of the projects. And it's all about moving forward as Typhoon crushes its enemies, breaks every law available or in existence, and gaining money and power. They are more suited to be like the bad guys of the AMP role-playing game. And of course you have information how they get with other organizations, their affiliations, information on the board of directors, associates, different rumors surrounding the organization, how to play, for example, as a contractor, different views on how they view some other affiliations like weaklings, like for example the changelings, and how they consider some other affiliations like potential allies. The new power, which is Juicer, is about controlling the endocrine system and forcing it to produce juice. So as you can see, they manufacture drugs using this new power, inserting the very essence of juice into different substances. And you have augments such as Adrenaline Junkie, Designer Drug. You also have tricks such as Better Living Through Chemistry. The AMP has fine intuitive control of their endorphins and other chemical responses. Due to this, they add user as a bonus to checks against the law of attraction, fear, etc. Anything related to chemical responses. And you also have sniff test. A brief smell or taste of any chemical can tell the character a great deal of information. If successful under moderate check, the character learns the identity of the nature of the chemical. So you have many things related to that, to the chemistry of things. And then you have new gifts such as notoriety and Typhoon Associate. And new drawbacks such as absolute loyalty and fatal attraction. There's also information on a new drug called Chillax. And the effects is basically a drug that lowers the fight or flight response. You also have information on a Typhoon non-player character, which is Kickstart, who has the primary power of Battery and secondary power of Behemoth. You also have this adventure focusing on Typhoon, which is Due South. This adventure is basically a smuggling operation. The characters play as contractors of Typhoon, and there is a lot of opportunity to carry out mayhem and destruction and violence. So this is very well suited for the essence of Typhoon as an affiliation. And then we have information on the United Human Front. Now, the United Human Front at times they feel a bit like a contradiction because they aren't exactly completely evil, to put it in a way. The leader, which is Dr. Stephens, had a very sad encounter with the AMP condition. His brother mutated because of it, but he did not survive the transformation process. So he considers the AMP being as a diseased individual. So he's actually trying to fight the AMP condition as if it were some sort of disease. So he gets many hateful people within the affiliation because of it. There is many gun nuts just enter the organization because they just want to shoot someone or punch someone in the face. They all have that like pent up violence, and they carry out different types of let's say harassment and bullying at first to make AMPs feel unwelcome in different cities. And if that doesn't work, they turn to violence, capturing them or killing them. Most of all, they capture them to get information on different safe houses of the AMPs and to study them. In fact, they can be quite creepy. It depends on the cell that is operating because they are divided by cells. But some of them truly look like mad scientists who are just capturing AMPs and doing what they want with them. But there are also other cells of UHF who actually focus on protecting mankind. In fact, they can actually become allied with other AMPs when fighting evil AMPs that want to kill people and are just into to make life miserable for everyone. So the UHF is probably one of the most complex affiliations because you can find bad guys and good guys within it. You have information on their equipment, on the type of weapons that they use, their hierarchy within the affiliation organization. You have information on special projects, on how they try to carry out different actions against the law and against the awareness of other, below the awareness of other AMPs, and trying to keep anonymity when they are carrying out their more violent operations. And you have information on how they view, well, pretty much they view other AMPs as a threat for the most part, but again, it depends on the cell. And you have information on new gifts such as Acclimated. With time and practice, the character's body fully embraces the effects of their genetic tampering. Now, this is very important for the UHF because they're pretty much normal humans. They need to get a bit of an edge when fighting AMPs. So they have genetic tampering, which gives them a template to obtain enhanced senses and physical abilities to fight or subdue AMPs. So you have things like the canine template. Subtle changes to the nasal and auditory canals significantly sharpen the senses, granting a bonus to perception and survival checks. And so forth, you have the feline template, the piscine template, ursine template, and you have, for example, the primate template. Humans' closest genetic relatives retain a wild energy and curiosity, Various strains of primate DNA in introduction add to the athletics and intuition checks. So you want to fight amps more close and personal, you need to take one of these templates, like for example the gorilla template. Using mountain gorilla DNA results in a powerful adversary, granting a genetic tampering bonus to might and strength checks. So this, if you want to slug it out with an amp, you take the gorilla template. And then you have information on Monet, which is basically a non-player character of the UHF, and she has this genetic tampering that allows her to be a bit more, to have a bit more of an edge when fighting amps up close. And then you have the adventure related to the UHF, which is Darker Light. In this adventure, an important non-player character is coming to visit, and the cell to which the characters belong to need to be on standby in case she needs their help. And this adventure, for the most part, is about character interaction and role-playing some peaceful moments, but then many things will happen through the course of the adventure. Raids will happen, some opportunities to carry out rescue operations, and interrogation as well. So I think that all of these events can bring out the best and the worst in the UHF. So what do I think of Affiliation Guide number 1 for AMP Year 2? If you are a casual AMP player, maybe you won't need this, or maybe not yet, because these guides are more for a focused type of campaign. That is, if you want a campaign or some adventures focused on the changelings or seekers of enlightenment, then these guides, or this compilation of guides, is perfect for that. So this is more for the hardcore AMP player, and for that game master that wants to focus more on a particular affiliation. If you want a group that belongs to just one affiliation, or if you want to handle an affiliation as an antagonist or as a long-term ally, then this guide is a must-have. I really like that they included adventures that express the character and theme of the different affiliations. And I also like that they included new powers and new features overall. So with those things considered, I recommend that you get Affiliation Guide number 1. Well, thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.